A courtroom is supposed to be a house of justice, but for Judge Agatha Roth, it was her personal kingdom built on prejudice and fueled by greed. She wielded her gavel like a hammer, crushing the lives of the innocent, especially those who looked different. One morning, a disheveled black man, David Stone, stands before her, accused of a minor crime. Judge Roth, seeing an easy target, decides to make an example of him. She insults him, mocks him, and tries to throw him in jail to rot. What she doesn't know is that David Stone isn't a vagrant. He's the director of the FBI, and he's not just on trial. He's on her case. The air in courtroom 3B of the Central District Courthouse was always stale, thick with the scent of old paper, cheap disinfectant, and quiet desperation. Presiding over this chamber of misery was Judge Agatha Roth, a woman whose black robes seemed to draw all the light and warmth from the room. Her silver hair was pulled back into a bun so tight it looked painful, and her face was a permanent mask of sour disapproval. This morning she was in a particularly foul mood. "Mr. Bradford," she sighed, looking down at a young man with a fraternity haircut and an expensive suit. "This is your second DUI in 6 months. What do you have to say for yourself?" His lawyer, a slick man named Patterson, stood. "Your Honor, Chad is a good kid. He's applying for a mentorship program with the mayor's office. He simply made a poor judgment call. He's a menace," Roth snapped, but there was no heat in it. "Still, the mayor's program, fine." She banged her gavel. "A $2,500 fine, 100 hours of community service, which I'm sure Mr. Patterson will find a way to fulfill for you, and a 90-day license suspension. Don't let me see you in here again, Mr. Bradford. You're better than this." "Thank you, Your Honor," the young man said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Next case," shouted the bailiff, a burly man named Marson, who mirrored the judge's unpleasant demeanor. "The People versus David Stone." The energy in the room shifted. The side door opened, and a sheriff's deputy pushed a man forward. He was black in his late 40s and dressed in a rumpled t-shirt, torn jeans, and a jacket that looked like it had been slept in. His beard was uncrimped, and his hair was matted. This was the man who had been arrested 2 nights prior for trespassing in a public park after 9:00 p.m. and resisting arrest. Judge Roth's eyes narrowed, her disapproval hardening into genuine contempt. The man, David Stone, simply looked at her, his expression unreadable. Well, Mr. Stone, stand up straight when you address the court. Your public defender is—" "Ah, Miss Jenkins," Roth said, waving a hand dismissively. A young, visibly nervous woman, Sarah Jenkins, hurried to the podium. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Stone, pleads not guilty. We request bail be set at on recognizance. He has no prior record, and the charges are what, Miss Jenkins?" Roth's voice was sharp as glass. "He was trespassing. He resisted Officer Miller. Is that what you call minor?" "The resisting charge seems unsubstantiated, Your Honor. My client states he merely asked why he was being arrested." Sarah fumbled, shuffling her papers. Roth let out a sound that was half scoff, half laugh. She turned her full, venomous attention to the man in the torn jacket. "Mr. Stone, do you have a job?" David Stone looked at her. His voice was quiet, raspy. "I'm between projects." "Between projects," Roth mocked. "Is that what we're calling vagrancy now? Where do you live?" "Here and there, I see." Judge Roth leaned forward, her knuckles white on her gavel. "So, we have a jobless vagrant who resists police officers and thinks public parks are his personal bedroom, and you want me to release him on his own recognizance so he can go back to resisting and being between projects all over this city." "Your Honor, he has a right to reasonable bail," Sarah Jenkins protested weakly. "Rights of tax-paying citizens who contribute to society." "Ms. Jenkins," Roth said, her voice dropping to a dangerous low, "not for people like Mr. Stone who drain our resources." The racial subtext was so thick it was practically a physical object in the room. David Stone finally spoke again, his voice clear, not in the least intimidated. "So, contributing to society is a prerequisite for justice, Your Honor." The courtroom went silent. Judge Roth's face turned a shade of mottled crimson. "Are you questioning me, boy? Is that contempt I hear in your voice?" "I'm asking a question, ma'am," he said, holding her gaze. "Mom!" she shrieked. "You will address me as Your Honor, Beliff Marson." "Yes, Judge. I find this vagrant in contempt of court, and for the original charges I am setting bail at $50,000. A collective gasp went through the gallery. Sarah Jenkins's jaw dropped. 50,000, Your Honor. That's unconstitutional for trespassing. You just let a man who could have killed someone walk out of here with a fine. Are you also in contempt, Miss Jenkins? Roth hissed. One more word and I'll have you sanctioned. Mr. Stone, you will be remanded to the county jail until you can post bond or until your trial date, whichever comes first. And given your attitude, I'll be sure to schedule that trial for as far out as the law allows. Get him out of my sight. Bailiff Markson grabbed David Stone's arm with unnecessary roughness. Let's go, project! As he was being led away, David looked back one last time at Judge Agatha Roth. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He was memorizing. And as the heavy door slammed shut, Judge Roth smiled, feeling a deep, satisfying sense of order restored. She had put another piece of trash where it belonged. The holding cell at the county jail was a concrete box that smelled of bleach, sweat, and despair. David Stone, or as he was known outside these walls, Director Marcus Thorne of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, sat on a thin mattress and cataloged his surroundings. This wasn't a spur-off-the-moment decision. This was the culmination of Operation Justice Shield, a 6-month multi-agency investigation into Judge Agatha Roth. It had started with a tip from a terrified whistleblower, a former court clerk named Maria Gonzalez. Maria had brought the FBI a stack of documents. They showed a pattern. Nonviolent minority offenders receiving maximum sentences, while wealthy white defendants, especially those represented by certain law firms or connected to certain developers, had their charges disappear. The money trail was complex, laundered through shell corporations and judicial charities. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, led by Agent Chen, had been tracing the money, but the civil rights violations were harder to prove. Roth was clever. Her racism was couched in legal-sounding terms like prior record, vagrancy, and contempt. The operation needed a final piece. They needed to prove unequivocally that Roth's malice was personal, that she would manufacture justice based on her own prejudice. You're insane, Director, Agent Price, his second-in-command, had argued in the command center. A nondescript van parked 2 blocks from the courthouse just yesterday. Going in yourself as a vagrant. What if they search you, find your credentials? They won't, Marcus had said, pulling on the torn jacket. All my credentials, weapons, and comms are with you. I'm going in clean. We need to see her in action. We need to feel the system she's created. We need the audio from inside. He had a tiny state-of-the-art audio transmitter, no bigger than a grain of rice, surgically implanted in his mare, a last resort device for deep cover operations. He could activate it with a specific click of his teeth, and it was now live. Everything he heard, everything said to him, was being beamed directly to Agent Price. A key rattled in the lock. Bailiff Markson stood there, a nasty grin on his face. Got a special visitor, Stone, Markson sneered. He was flanked by 2 other guards who looked like they'd been carved from granite. The judge don't like being disrespected, she called ahead. Wanted to make sure you got the special welcome package. Marcus stood slowly. And what does that entail? It entails you learn in your place. The first. Punch came from Markson, a hard-practiced shot to the gut that drove the air from Marcus's lungs. The next 2 came from the guards, one to the ribs, one to the face. Marcus, highly trained in hand-to-hand combat, had to force himself to take the blows, to collapse realistically, to not disarm all 3 of them in under 10 seconds. He crumpled to the floor, tasting blood. That's just a down payment, Markson panted, adjusting his belt. You keep that mouth of yours shut. Maybe you'll make it to your trial. If not, accidents happen. He kicked Marcus once more in the ribs for good measure, and the 3 of them left, laughing. Marcus lay on the cold concrete, every part of him aching. He clicked his teeth twice, signaling to Price. Evidence received. He was right. This was the only way. You couldn't just read a file to understand this level of evil. You had to wear it. The next day, Marcus was brought back to the courtroom for the morning's arraignments, sitting in the jury box with other shackled inmates. He was the prop, the warning. Roth wanted the other defendants to see what happened when you disrespected her. She was currently hearing the case of Leon Thomas, a 19-year-old black kid arrested for possession of a controlled substance. Mr. Thomas, Roth said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. This is a serious charge, and I see here you have a prior resisting arrest just 6 months ago. But I didn't resist, Leon said, his voice cracking. The officer, he, Mr. Thomas, I am not interested in your excuses. Roth said, you were caught with narcotics, and you have a history of noncompliance. This community will not tolerate it. I am sentencing you to the mandatory minimum of 3 years in state prison. The boy's mother, sitting in the back, let out a strangled sob. 3 years for a gram of marijuana. He's a good boy. The other charge. It was a mistake. Remove that woman. Roth barked. As Leon Thomas was led away, his eyes met Marcus's. In them, Marcus saw the end of hope. He saw a life being broken in real time. Marcus clicked his teeth. Agent Price pulled a file on Leon Thomas. I want that prior arresting officer's name. I want to know who he talks to, who he takes money from. I'm betting it's Markson. Roth, energized by her display of power, finally turned her gaze to Marcus. Ah, Mr. Stone, back for more. I hope your accommodations were to your liking. Miss Jenkins, any progress on that $50,000 bond? Your Honor, you know that's impossible, Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage. This is punitive and it's cruel. It's justice, Roth corrected. And as for your client, I've reviewed the trespassing charge. I'm adding a charge of vagrancy and intent to commit public nuisance. We'll see how you feel after a few more nights, Mr. Stone. Maybe then you'll learn to respect the law. She banged her gavel, a grim smile on her face. Next case. For 2 more days, Marcus Thorne endured the system. He ate the flavorless gray-cold food. He listened to the casual cruelty of the guards. He talked to the other inmates, and he gathered intelligence. He learned from a man in his cell block that Beliff Markson ran the entire commissary kickback scheme using a specific guard as his bagman. He learned that Officer Miller, the cop who arrested him, was Markson's cousin. It was a family business. He also learned that Leon Thomas's prior resisting arrest charge had been from the same Officer Miller. It was a setup. Miller would target young black men, stop them for nothing, and if they so much as asked a question, he'd tack on a resisting charge, making them prior for Judge Roth to sentence heavily. In the command van, Agent Price and Agent Chen were working furiously. He was right, Price said, his eyes glued to a financial chart on his screen. Leon Thomas's arrest. Miller Marson. The day after Leon was sentenced, a payment of $2,000 was transferred from a police benevolent fund, which is just a slush account, to Markson's wife. It's dirtier than that, Agent Chen said, tapping her keyboard. I've got the bank manager for the developer, Mr. Harrison. We've been squeezing him. He just flipped. Judge. Roth isn't just taking bribes to let kids off. She's directing the arrests. What? Price turned, stunned. It's a broken window scheme. She gets a developer, let's say Trevor Harrison's father, to donate to her charity. In exchange, she directs Miller and Marson to clean up the neighborhood where he wants to build his new luxury condos. That means arresting homeless people, kids hanging out, anyone who looks like a vagrant, people like David Stone. She gets them off the street. Harrison gets his property values up and she gets rich. And she jails the director of the FBI in the process, Price said, rubbing his temples. This is beyond corruption. This is feudalism. Harrison's son is in court today, Chen noted. Trevor Harrison, DUI manslaughter. He hit and killed a cyclist 3 months ago. Let's listen in. I want to see how she handles this one. Back in courtroom 3B, the atmosphere was different. It was hushed, respectful. Trevor Harrison, a younger, even more arrogant version of Chad Bradford, stood at the podium with the same slick lawyer Patterson. Judge Roth's tone was somber, almost motherly. Mr. Harrison, this is a terrible, terrible tragedy, she said. It is, Your Honor, Patterson interjected smoothly, and my client is devastated. But the facts which the prosecution has graciously stipulated to show this was a tragic accident. The cyclist, Mr. James, I believe, swerved unexpectedly. My client's blood alcohol level was 0.08, the bare legal limit. He is a grieving young man. Marcus, sitting in the inmate box, watched the lie unfold. The real file which his team had showed the BAC was 0.114, and Harrison had been speeding in a 25 million zone. Yes, I see. Judge Roth said the prosecution has agreed to amend the charge from manslaughter to reckless driving and failure to yield. Given the extenuating circumstances and the victim's own contributory negligence, she banged her gavel. Charge dismissed upon payment of a $10,000 fine. Mr. Harrison, you are free to go. Please be more careful in the future. The father, a portly man in a $1,000 suit sitting in the front row, nodded once at Judge Roth. A silent $1 million thank you. Roth, filled with the warmth of a job well done, then turned her cold eyes back to the inmate box. Now for the refu. Bailiff, bring me Mr. Stone. I have a plea offer for him. Sarah Jenkins, who had watched the Harrison dismissal with her mouth open in horror, rushed to the podium as Marcus was brought forward. Miss Jenkins, Roth said, The prosecutor has generously offered to drop the contempt and vagrancy charges if your client pleads guilty to trespassing and resisting arrest. The sentence will be 18 months in the county jail, a very generous offer. 18 months? Sarah gasped for trespassing. That's insane. He's not pleading to anything. We demand a trial by jury. A trial, Roth laughed. Fine, but his bail remains $50,000 and I'll be presiding. And I will remind you that the maximum sentence for these combined charges, especially after he has wasted the court's time with a trial, is 5 years. 18 months is a gift. She turned to Marcus. Well, Mr. Stone, are you going to be smart for once in your life, or are you going to be stubborn? Take the deal. It's the best you're ever going to get. No, Marcus said. His voice was no longer raspy. It was flat, cold, and clear. No, Roth's face darkened. No, I won't be taking the deal, Marcus said. And no, I don't want her trial by jury. Then you are a fool, Roth shouted, slamming her hand on the bench. You will rot in that jail. I am finding you in contempt again. That's another 30 days. I'll keep adding 30 days until you're a skeleton. You're not going to be adding anything, Judge, Marcus said, standing to his full height. The defeated, disheveled posture was gone. What did you say to me? Roth whispered, her eyes wide with fury. I said, Marcus repeated, his voice now carrying the unmistakable ring of command that your time on this bench is over. Bailiff Markson, you might want to put your hands on the podium slowly. Who the hell do you think you are? Markson snarled, moving toward Marcus, his hand reaching for his baton. I think Marcus said, I'm the man who has a recording of you offering a welcome package to an inmate who has a record of a $2,000 kickback for the false conviction of Leon Thomas. And who knows about the offshore account in the Cayman Islands, the one you used for the commissary fund? Account number 47B992? Music. Markson froze, his face turning the color of ash. Judge Roth's brain tried to process what was happening. What is this? What is this nonsense? This, Marcus said, is the part where you stop talking. He turned his head and clicked his teeth. Agent Price were green. Execute. The words were barely out of his mouth when the main courtroom doors burst open. The doors didn't just open. They exploded inward, slamming against the retaining walls. In poured a dozen figures, all clad in black tactical gear with bold white letters emblazoned on their backs. FBI. The courtroom, which had been simmering in confused silence, erupted. Reporters who had been tipped off by Agent Chen and were hiding in the gallery suddenly produced cameras. Sarah Jenkins stumbled back, her hand over her mouth. Trevor Harrison and his father, who hadn't left yet, were frozen in their seats. Nobody move, shouted Agent Price, his weapon held in a low, ready position. 2 agents immediately peeled off and cuffed a stunned Bailiff Markson, who offered no resistance. 2 more moved to the prosecutor's table and secured Officer Miller, who had been observing his handiwork. Judge Agatha Roth was on her feet, her face a mask of apoplectic rage and utter confusion. What is the meaning of this? This is my courtroom. I am a sitting Article 3 judge. You have no authority here. I'll have all of you disbarred and jailed. Marcus Thorne simply unclipped the front of his orange jail jumpsuit. Underneath, taped to his chest, was a small waterproof packet. He tore it open and produced a set of credentials and a badge. He walked past the bar, the symbolic barrier separating the law from the public, and slapped them on the ledge of the judge's bench. Judge Agatha Roth, he said, his voice now a booming baritone that needed no microphone. My name is not David Stone. It is Director Marcus Thorne of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The badge gleamed under the courtroom lights. If the room had been loud before, it was now cathedral silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Roth stared at the badge. She looked at the disheveled man. No, the director standing before her. She looked at the FBI agents fanned out across her kingdom. The calculation was impossible. Her mind simply broke. No, she whispered. It's a lie. It's a trick. He's a vagrant. I'm the vagrant you tried to jail for 18 months for trespassing. Marcus corrected her, his eyes like chips of ice. I'm the project. You had your bafe beat in a holding cell. I'm the refuge you thought you could sweep away. He turned to Agent Price. Is it done? Yes, sir. Price said, Agent Chen has simultaneous warrants being served on the bank manager, 3 of Patterson's law partners, and she is personally freezing all of Judge Roth's known assets, including the charity and the Cayman account. Good. Marcus turned back to Roth, who had collapsed into her high-backed chair. She was no longer a tyrant. She was just a small, pale old woman. Agatha Roth, Marcus said, his voice formal. You are under arrest for violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. You are under arrest for racketeering, U.S. Code Section 1961. You are under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. He nodded to Agent Price. Cover. You can't, Roth whimpered, as Price and another agent moved up to the bench. Judicial immunity. There is no immunity for this, Marcus said. There is no immunity for running a criminal enterprise. There is no immunity for destroying lives. You weren't a judge. You were a mob boss in a robe. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the chamber. It was the same sound her gavel had made, but this one was final. You set me up, she screamed, as they pulled her to her feet, her hands bound behind her back. This is entrapment. Entrapment, Marcus said, is when the government induces a person to commit a crime they otherwise wouldn't. Tell me, Judge, did I induce you to hate me on sight? Did I induce you to set an unconstitutional bail? Did I induce you to have me beaten? Or did you do all of that all by yourself simply because you looked at my face and decided I was worthless? He didn't wait for an answer. He pointed to the front row. Agent Price, arrest Trevor Harrison and his father. The charge is bribery of a federal official or, well, a state official, but we'll sort out the jurisdiction later. Patterson, too. He's an accessory. As Roth was led, weeping and cursing from the bench, her bench, she was forced to walk past the man she had tried to destroy. You'll pay for this, she shrieked at him. Marcus just looked at her. No, Judge, you're the one who's going to pay. For the first time in your life, you're finally going to be held accountable. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The courthouse was shut down by federal marshals. The press, who had only been expecting a small-time corruption story, had just witnessed the arrest of the century. Marcus Thorne, still in his dirty t-shirt and jail jumpsuit, stood in the center of the chaos, a general on a battlefield he had just conquered. Sir, Agent Price said, handing him a satellite phone, the Attorney General is on line 1. Marcus took it. Mr. Attorney General. Yes, sir. It's done. The rot was deep. Yes, she's in custody. No, sir. I'm fine. A little sore. He listened for a moment. I agree. We need to audit every single case she's ever presided over, and I need the Civil Rights Division down here now. He hung up and looked at the stunned faces remaining in the courtroom. The lawyers, the clerks, the reporters, they were all looking at him with a mixture of terror and awe. He saw Sarah Jenkins, the public defender, pressed against the back wall, tears streaming down her face. He walked over to her. She flinched. Miss Jenkins, he said, his voice softening. Director Thorne, she whispered. I had no idea. I tried. She was so powerful. You did what you could, Marcus said. You were the only person in this room who spoke up for me. The only one who spoke up for Leon Thomas. It wasn't enough. It will be now, Marcus said. He handed her a business card from his pocket packet. My team is going to need a statement. But more than that, we're going to need your help. You know the victims. You know the files. We're going to form a task force to review every nonviolent conviction Judge Roth has issued in the last 10 years. I want you to help me lead it. Sarah stared at the card. Me? But You're a good lawyer, Miss Jenkins. You just needed to be in a courtroom that wasn't broken. Welcome to the new one. He left her and walked to the holding cell area by the courtroom. He had the marshals open the cell where the other inmates, including Leon Thomas, had been returned during the raid. Leon looked up terrified as the FBI director, still in inmate attire, stood before him. Leon Thomas, Marcus said. My name is Marcus Thorne. I know, Leon said. I saw the charges against you are being dismissed, all of them. The prior resisting charge is being expunged from your record. Officer Miller is not a cop. He's a criminal, and he's going to prison. Leon just stared, unable to comprehend. Your mother is outside, Marcus said. Go home. Leon Thomas stood up, tears welling in his eyes. He walked past Marcus and then stopped. Why? Why you? You could have. You're the director. Because Marcus said if the system can do this to the director of the FBI, I had to find out what it was doing to everyone else. Now go get your life back. As Leon ran out to find his mother, Agent Chen approached, a tablet in her hand. Sir, Chen said, it's even worse than we thought. We've got the bank manager. Roth wasn't just taking bribes. She was selling sentences, literally. She had a price list, $5,000 for a dismissal, $10,000 for a reduced sentence, $50,000 to make a felony disappear. She was charging a surcharge for minority defendants. What? Marcus said, his blood running cold. It was an administrative fee, she called it. If the defendant was black or Hispanic, the bribe price was 20% higher. She told the developers it was because it was harder to justify. Sir, she monetized her own racism. Marcus closed his eyes. The sheer transactional evil of it was staggering. Where is she now? He asked. Federal holding downtown. She's screaming for her lawyer. She's about to learn that Patterson is in the cell next to her. Good, Marcus said. I'm going to get cleaned up. Then I want to be in that interrogation room. She and I are going to have a long talk about that price list. The legal proceedings against Agatha Roth and her criminal enterprise were swift and brutal. The U.S. Attorney's Office, with the full backing of the Department of Justice, threw the book at her. Roth, stripped of her assets, was forced to accept a court-appointed defender, a fact that seemed to humiliate her more than the charges themselves. She tried to play the victim. She claimed she was a political prisoner, a target of a deep state conspiracy. She accused Director Thorne of planting evidence, of entrapment, of violating her rights. But the evidence was too vast. First, there was the audio. The courtroom heard in crystal clear our digital sound Marcus Thorne's voice as David Stone being respectful. And they heard Judge Roth's voice dripping with venom and racial animus. People like you. Drain our resources. I'll have you in contempt until you're a skeleton. Then there was the beating. The audio of Beliff Markson and his guards assaulting Marcus in his cell was played. The jury listened to the sickening thud of fists and Markson's voice. The judge don't like being disrespected. Markson and the guards had already pleaded guilty and were testifying against her in exchange for a lighter sentence. Then there was the money. Agent Chen presented a financial flowchart that was so complex it looked like a circuit diagram. It showed the money from Harrison, from other developers, from law firms flowing into her charity, then being laundered through offshore accounts, and finally ending up in her possession to buy a beach house, a luxury car, and a $100,000 on wine collection. Finally, there was the testimony. Maria Gonzalez, the whistleblower, told her story of being fired and threatened. Sarah Jenkins, no longer timid, spoke for 2 days, detailing the atmosphere of terror Roth cultivated, and then dozens of victims, mothers, fathers, and siblings of people like Leon Thomas. People who had lost their children, their homes, their jobs, all because of Roth's corrupt, racist justice. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 45 minutes. Agatha Roth was found guilty on all 47 counts. The sentencing hearing was packed. Marcus Thorne sat in the front row, this time in a perfectly tailored suit. He was not there as a victim, but as a witness, representing the system she had almost broken. The new judge, a non-onsense federal judge named Robert Chenoweth, looked down at Roth. Agatha Roth, Judge Chenoweth, began. You have been found guilty of crimes so heinous they strike at the very heart of our democracy. A judge is the final line of defense for the Constitution. You turn that defense into a toll booth. You didn't just break the law, you were the law, and you used that power to feed your own greed and your own pathetic prejudices. Roth, in an orange jumpsuit, started to speak. You will be silent, Chenoweth roared. You were silent when the families of the men you railroaded begged for mercy. You were silent when you took bribes to let the wealthy and the guilty walk free. Now it is your turn to be silent. He shuffled his papers. I see here in your own files your preferred sentencing. You were fond of a mandatory minimums. You were fond of maximum sentences. You believed in making an example of people. So I will follow your precedent. On the counts of racketeering and conspiracy, I sentence you to 30 years in federal prison. On the counts of money laundering, I sentence you to 20 years. On the 40 counts of deprivation of civil rights, I sentence you to 10 years for each count. These sentences will not be served concurrently. They will be served consecutively. A lawyer in the gallery did the math and gasped. That's 450 years. It is a life sentence, Judge Chenoweth confirmed. And it is a merciful one. You will be transferred not to a comfortable country club facility, but to the federal supermax, where you will spend the rest of your natural life in a cell just as you planned for so many others. You will have no power. You will have no influence. You will, for all intents and purposes, cease to exist. You are a blight on this nation, and you are dismissed, as she was led out screaming. Her eyes found Marcus's. He didn't smile, he didn't smirk. He just held her gaze, a silent testament to the fact that justice, though it may grind slowly, had finally ground her to dust. The day after Judge Agatha Roth was led from her courtroom in handcuffs, the city did not celebrate. It held its breath. The arrest of a sitting judge by the FBI was not just a news story. It was an earthquake that had cracked the very foundations of the city's justice system. The public was left standing on the rubble, wondering what, if anything, was still standing. For director Marcus Thorne, the arrest was not the end. It was the beginning of the war. His first act was to establish a command center, not in an FBI field office, but in the very courthouse Roth had poisoned. He commandeered a high F-floor conference suite, its windows looking down on the city she had lorded over. Within hours, it was transformed into the Justice Shield Task Force headquarters. The walls were papered with flowcharts, photographs, and timelines. The complex web of bribes and kickbacks that Agent Chen had uncovered now looked like the battle map for an invading army. In the center of it all sat Sarah Jenkins. She had barely slept in 48 hours, but she was electric, her eyes sharp and clear, the nervous tremor gone. She was no longer a timid public defender. She was a woman who had seen the monster behind the curtain and was now helping to tear the whole stage down. "Look at this," she said, her voice tapping a file on the long table. Marcus and Agent Price moved closer. The file was thin, almost forgotten. Miguel Ramirez, arrested 2023. Charge, broken taillight, resisting arrest. Officer Miller again, Price noted, his voice flat. "Again," Sarah confirmed. "But look at the transcript." Roth asked him his plea. He said, "I'm not guilty, but I don't have money for a lawyer or for bail." Roth found him in contempt. Then she found him in contempt again for asking what that meant. She stacked contempt charges until the broken taillight became a 6-month sentence. But it gets worse. She pointed to a handwritten note on the prosecutor's memo. Roth held him for 6 months. At the end, she brought him back, offered him time served if he pleaded guilty to the resisting charge. He took the deal just to get out. He's now a convicted felon for a broken taillight. He lost his construction job, his apartment, his wife and kids moved back to Arizona, his life obliterated. "How many?" Marcus asked, his voice a low rumble. "We've flagged over 2,000 cases just like this," Agent Chen said from her terminal. "Nonviolent minority defendants, disproportionately high sentences, and almost all of them represented by the public defender's office because she knew they were too overworked to fight her." "She wasn't just a racist," Sarah said, slamming the file shut. "She was a predator. She was targeting the weak because she knew they couldn't fight back. She had help," Marcus said, turning to the wall. He pointed to a photo of a man in a tailored suit smiling at a police charity gala. "She was the queen, but she had a court. Let's go talk to the jester." District Attorney Arthur Coington had prided himself on his untouchability. He was a politician, a creature of the system. He donated to the right campaigns, attended the right parties, and prosecuted the right people. When the FBI requested his presence for an informal interview, he arrived with his lawyer, full of bluster and professional outrage. He was shown to an interrogation room, not a conference room. Marcus Thorne was waiting for him, still in the simple t-shirt and jeans he'd been wearing under his prison jumpsuit. He hadn't put a suit back on yet. He wanted Coington to remember the man from the cell. "Director Thorne," Coington began, "this is a travesty. Agatha Roth was a rogue element, a tragic, isolated case. My office had no save it." Marcus cut him off. He slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was an email printed out. "Is that your signature?" Coington's lawyer leaned over to read it. Coington's face went pale. That's taken out of context," he stammered. "Read it aloud, Agent Price," Marcus ordered. Price stood from the corner. To all 8 eyes, he read his voice monotone. The Harrison Initiative. "As we move to support the mayor's urban renewal plan, please be advised that Judge Roth is taking a firm hand on all vagrancy and nuisance-related cases to expedite these matters and clear the docket. Your priority is to secure plea agreements. Do not over-litigate. Give her what she needs to clean up the district. Let's get these wins." Marcus leaned forward. "Give her what she needs. Wins. Was Leon Thomas a win, Arthur? Was Miguel Ramirez a win? I was encouraging efficiency." "That's not a crime," Coington protested. "No," Marcus agreed, "but this is—" He nodded to Agent Chen, who entered and placed a thick ledger on the table. "This is the slush fund you and Roth managed, the police benevolent fund that Officer Miller and Beliff Marson paid into. And this," she tapped a page, "is where you took money out for a consulting fee. You weren't just following her lead, Arthur. You were her gatekeeper." You were the one who suppressed exculpatory evidence. You were the one who told his ADAs to stand down. She couldn't have done it without you. Coyington's arrogance shattered. He was a weak man who had hidden behind a powerful woman, and now she was gone. "I'll testify," he whispered, his eyes wide with panic. "I'll tell you everything. The other lawyers, the developers, Patterson, I'll give you all of them." "You will," Marcus said. "You're going to stand up in open court and you're going to confess to every single life you helped destroy. And then you're going to prison for 20 years. You were the DA. You, of all people, should have known the price." The first ripple of the dam breaking was the release of Leon Thomas. His mother, Maya, had been sitting on a bench outside the county jail for 3 days ever since she heard the news. She didn't trust it. She didn't trust the TV, the lawyers, or the system. She would believe it when she saw it. Sarah Jenkins sat with her holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. "It won't be long now, Maya. The judge signed the order this morning." "The new judge," Maya said, spitting the word this morning. "The old one, I hope she rots." The heavy steel gate buzzed, a sound that usually meant a new prisoner was arriving. It scraped open. Leon Thomas stood there, blinking in the bright sunlight. He wasn't in a jumpsuit. He was in the same clothes he'd been arrested in, which a guard had disdainfully thrown at him. He looked thin, pale, and terrified. He saw his mother. "Mama." His voice was a crack. Maya Thomas didn't run. She walked, her legs shaking, and then she collapsed against him, her sobs echoing in the prison sallyport. "My boy! They gave me back! My boy!" Leon just cried, his face buried in her shoulder. "I thought I was gone," she said. 3 years. I thought it was over." Sarah Jenkins stepped forward, her own eyes wet. "Leon, my name is Sarah. I was the public defender in the courtroom." Leon looked at her, his eyes full of suspicion. "It's over, Lion," she said, her voice firm. "It's really over. The charges are gone. The prior charge is gone. It's like it never happened. You're free." She handed him a card. "This is the number for the task force. We're setting up a victims' compensation fund. We can't give you back the time you lost, but we're going to give you everything else." Leon just stared at the card. He looked from his mother to Sarah and back to the sunlit street. He took one step, then another. He was outside the gate. He was real. As he and his mother walked away, holding on to each other as if in a hurricane, Marcus Thorne watched from an unmarked car down the street. "That's one," Agent Price said from the driver's seat. "One," Marcus repeated. "One down. 1999 to go." The karma for the wealthy was a different, colder vintage. Trevor Harrison and his father, the portly developer, had their assets frozen on the same day as Roth. Their army of high-priced lawyers who had been partners at Patterson's now defunct firm were all facing their own indictments. They were forced to accept the same plea deals they had once paid to avoid. They stood before Judge Robert Chenoweth, the federal judge who had sentenced Roth, looking like ghosts. Their 1,000 suits were gone, replaced by ill-fitting rentals. Their arrogance was replaced by a Holloway dread. "Mr. Harrison Sr., Judge Chenoweth said, his voice ringing with contempt. "You were a builder. You were supposed to build this city up. Instead, you chose to build your luxury condos on the foundation of human misery. You paid Agatha Roth to clean up neighborhoods, a task she performed by illegally jailing the poor, the homeless, and the black. You didn't just bribe a judge. You funded a campaign of terror." I'm bankrupt," the father whispered. "You've taken everything. You have taken nothing," Chenoweth thundered. "The government has seized the profits of your criminal enterprise. You are not a victim. You are a co-conspirator. And you, Trevor Harrison, you took a man's life with your car, and you used your father's blood money to walk away without a scratch. That ends. I sentence you, Harrison Sr., to 15 years in federal prison for conspiracy and racketeering. All your assets are forfeit. I sentence you, Trevor Harrison, to 25 years for the original charge of DUI manslaughter, which is now reinstated, and for your part in the bribery. You believed your money made you a different class of citizen. You were wrong. You are nothing but a common criminal. Get them out of my sight." As they were led away, the father looked back at the gallery as if expecting someone to save him. No one did. The entire city, which had once borne his name on buildings and hospitals, had already forgotten him. The final and hardest piece of karma was reserved for Agatha Roth. She was not sent to a country club minimum security prison.
She was classified due to the nature of her crimes and her specialized knowledge of the legal system as a high-risk inmate. She was put on a bus, shackled at the wrists and ankles, and driven for 2 days to ADX Florence, the Supermax facility in Colorado designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in the federal system. When she arrived, she was processed. "Stand on the yellow line," a guard barked. "I am a former judge," Agatha tried, her voice weak. "I have rights. I demand to speak to the warden." The guard, a large, impassive woman named Officer Grant, looked up from her clipboard. "Your inmate, a Grantate 82291, said your son. You have the right to shut up. Strip." Agatha froze. "What? Strip now or I'll strip you." "Welcome to the show, Judge." Humiliated. Cold and powerless, Agatha Roth was subjected to the same invasive, dehumanizing search she had sentenced thousands of others to without a second thought. Her robes were gone, her bun was gone, her name was gone. She was given a rough orange jumpsuit and led down a long, echoing concrete hall. The sound of men screaming and banging on their doors was deafening. "You're in H Unit," Grant said, stopping at a solid steel door. "Special management, 23-hour-a-day lockdown." "I can't be in general population," Agatha panted, the panic finally setting in. "They'll kill me. I put people in here. Should have thought of that before, sweetheart." Grant said she unlocked the heavy door. "You've got a cellmate. We had to move her. She doesn't play well with others." The door slid open. The cell was a tiny concrete box with a steel sink and a bunk bed.
Sitting on the lower bunk was a broad, muscular woman with tattoos covering her neck and face. She was reading a worn paperback. She looked up slowly, her eyes as dead and cold as a shark's. "This," Grant said with a cruel smirk, "is Mama Diaz. She's in for a lot of things, but she's particularly famous for running the Justice for Judges program inside. Seems her brother got railroaded by a judge in L.A. a few years back. He died inside. She hates crooked judges. Don't you, Diaz?" Mama Diaz didn't say anything. She just closed her book and stood up slowly. She was a full foot taller than Roth. "No, please," Agatha whimpered, backing away. "Oh," Grant said. "And Judge, one more thing." She held up her radio. "I'm heading for my break. This wing's soundproof, and the camera, it's been glitching all day." She shoved Agatha Roth inside. "Have a good life, inmate," she said. The heavy door slammed shut. The clack of the pneumatic bolt sliding into place was the last sound of freedom Agatha Roth would ever hear. She was left in the dark with the physical embodiment of the karmic debt she had accrued over a lifetime of cruelty. 6 months later, courtroom 3B was reopened. The room had been exorcised. The dark wood was scrubbed and polished. The lighting was bright and warm. The air no longer smelled of desperation. A new defendant, a young man named Kevin, stood nervously at the podium. He was there for shoplifting. At the bench, a new figure sat. "Please be seated," she said. It was Judge Sarah Jenkins, robed and confirmed. She looked at the young man, not with contempt, but with a weary patience. "Mr. Allen, I've read your file. I see you're struggling. I see you've got a job interview next week, and the prosecutor tells me you stole a tie and a bar of soap. Is that right?" "Yes, Your Honor," Kevin whispered, bracing for the hammer to fall. "The district attorney's office," Sarah said, looking at the new young prosecutor, "has recommended diversion." "I agree. The charges will be dismissed provided you complete 40 hours of community service, but I'm adding a condition." She looked to the back of the courtroom. "The court administrator, Miss Maria Gonzalez, has agreed to personally mentor you. She's going to help you with your resume, and she's already found a clothing bank that will give you a full suit. No one should have to steal to look for a job." Maria, the former clerk who had started it all, stood up and nodded at Kevin, a kind smile on her face. "See me after, son. We'll get you sorted." Kevin looked from Maria to Judge Jenkins, his eyes wide with a feeling he couldn't name. It was hope. "Thank you, Your Honor," he said. "You're welcome, Mr. Allen," Sarah said. "See that you do well." She banged her gavel. It made a clean, crisp sound, the sound of justice, not of doom. From the last row of the gallery, hidden in the shadows, Marcus Thorne watched. He saw the system he had broken open, now healing, being run by the very people who had been its victims. He stood and walked out, unseen. He met Agent Price on the courthouse steps. The sun was setting, painting the city in gold. "It's done." Price said the Roth 2000 task force just processed its last case, Miguel Ramirez. He got a full pardon and a 7-figure settlement from the victims' fund. "Good," Marcus said, looking at the city. "They're calling themselves the Survivors Club now," Price added, a small smile on his face. "Leigh and Thomas is in trade school. Maria Gonzalez is running for city council.
The new DA just indicted Officer Miller's entire precinct. You started a revolution, sir. We started to clean up, Marcus corrected. It's not over. There's always another Roth. There's always another system built on greed and prejudice. But not this one, Price said. Not here. Not now. No, Marcus agreed. Not this one. He put on his sunglasses, though the sun was fading. Let's go home, Price. We've got work to do. The next one is already out there, and she's probably wondering why her kickbacks are late. He walked down the steps, not as a victim, not as a vagrant, but as a guardian. He had worn the face of the forgotten to remind the powerful that no one, not even a judge, is above the law. And that karma sometimes carries a badge. In the end, it took one man willing to descend into the belly of the beast to tear down a corrupt kingdom. Judge Roth believed she was the law, but she forgot that no one, not a judge, not a developer, not even a corrupt officer, is ever truly above it. The hard karma of justice finally came for her, and it came in the form of the very man she tried to crush. Her kingdom of prejudice was dismantled, and hundreds of innocent lives were restored. This story is a reminder that the fight for justice is real, and it happens every day. If you are on the edge of your seat, and if you believe that good must always confront evil, then please show your support. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to see that karma is real. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more true life stories of justice served. Thank you for watching.